Alright, so I received this email from somebody who wrote me a long message trying to understand where I'm coming from when it comes to properly labeling, what you do within the martial arts. I'm not going to read through the whole message, but just to identify the main questions to help him understand where I'm coming from. So, he said, I think the public can come to better understanding if people see the difference between saying I learned some techniques from this style versus saying that I do or teach a particular style. Then validity of their claims should be rightfully called to question because they brought race and culture to forefront when it's best not to. Better to say martial arts instead of a non-English word. So, what I'm basically identifying the problem, especially now because we have mass media such as YouTube and Facebook. Like YouTube, we are broadcasting ourselves to the entire world, and you're essentially, you're teaching, even if you don't think you're teaching, and you are also some people are actually making money, making lots of money. So now it's becoming like a profession. So, and then as you grow an audience, you get a lot of subscribers and a lot of views, you end up becoming like a self-proclaimed expert, or basically you end up becoming considered an expert within a field. So you might not even be an expert, but people will put you in that position to represent what an expert is supposed to be because they just want you to be there because they like you for whatever reason. So the thing is, with that position requires a lot of responsibility into properly educating your audience. And you should not be misguiding and misleading your students or your audience purposefully, and not just purposefully, but even mistakenly, because it's a part of your responsibility to make sure that what you say you're doing or what you're telling them that you're teaching them, is authentic, is real, or is something that you're even qualified to teach. So people have to realize how much of an influence they have over the people once they go public. Alright, so before the YouTube, if some of your friends and family ask you, hey, what do you practice? And even if you don't have that much of an understanding of what you're doing, you might say that you practice this or you practice that, and then you learn this technique, you learn that technique. But that's just within the context of just friends that you talk to, few family members. It's not reaching out to a worldwide audience. So another example, say Bruce Lee was hanging out with his friends, and then he called one of his friends a racist joke. He said some derogatory comment to his friend, and it was disrespectful. But he did it just between him and his friend. That is fine as long as his friend's fine with it and Bruce Lee's fine with it. Then they could joke around like that. But if Bruce Lee is going to be putting himself out to in a movie for the whole world to see, and then all of a sudden he's going to use the same derogatory comment towards his friend, or not his friend, but towards a fellow actor, now that's going to be misrepresenting him, misrepresenting his people and his entire culture based on how he was acting within that movie, basically being a bully. So the wider audience that you have, the more of a responsibility that you have in order to properly educate your audience and your students. And basically what I'm saying is that people that have a greater influence out there on the people, especially on YouTube, they need to take more care in how they represent what they do and what they teach. So what I'm basically telling the people is you have to be honest with the people. if the honest truth is, hey, you know, you love the martial arts, but you never ever studied under a real living martial art master. Say you're a Caucasian person living in America, but you love the martial arts. You've seen all of Bruce Lee's movies. You've seen all of Jet Li's movies. You saw all of Jackie Chan's movies. You saw all of Donnie Yen's movies, and you saw The Last Samurai, and you liked that movie. You saw Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and you liked that, and you saw all these things. And you read books. You read books on Japanese culture and Chinese culture. You do a lot of self-study. You studied Zen. You studied meditation. You studied yoga. You studied Tao Te Ching. You studied all these things. You read all these books, but you never really had a living Chinese martial art master. Then be honest with the public and tell them that hey, you know, I'm a white person, you know, and I love the martial arts. I love the Chinese martial arts. I love the Japanese martial arts. I love the Korean martial arts. But I never studied under a real living martial art master from any of these cultures. But I studied videos. I studied books, and I like all three of them. You know, I like all these expressions. Be honest with the public with that. You know, but as far as teaching is concerned, you know, in my eyes, if you have not studied under anybody living, no living martial arts master, you have no right to teach what they do. So if you studied Bruce Lee's books and you watched all his movies, you have no right to teach Bruce Lee's Kung Fu. You have no right to teach Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do. But you do have the right to point people towards that direction. You have the right to say, hey, you know, you could purchase these books as well and read those as well. Hey, you could watch his movies too and learn from that. But I can't teach you because that's his stuff. But what you can do is you could say, well, I can't teach you Jeet Kune Do. I can't teach you the Shaolin Kung Fu. I can't teach you Tai Chi. I can't teach you Wing Chun. But I could teach you my expression of the martial arts that have been inspired by Wing Chun, Tai Chi, Jeet Kune Do, the Shaolin martial arts, the Shaolin Kung Fu. Because I watched their videos, I read the books, a lot of the books, and I think I understand the techniques, but it's not theirs, but it's my expression. This is, whatever you're studying is my martial arts. It's not theirs, it's mine. But my techniques, my expression has been inspired by their work. That is being honest with the situation. That's telling people that you don't have the authority to teach any of those arts that were created by those people. And the only authority that you do have is to teach your own expression of the martial arts. And then you notify and you make it very clear to all your students that they are studying your martial art. They're not studying those from the East. They're not studying Jeet Kune Do. They're not studying Tai Chi. They're not studying the Shaolin Kung Fu. They're studying your expression of the martial arts that has been inspired by these arts. That to me is the authentic, legitimate way to advertise and notify the people of what you do. You know, especially if you're a teacher to the masses. Now, if you are not a teacher to the masses and you just study for yourself and maybe you just share it with a few of your friends and maybe a few of your family members, then it's not that big of a deal what you do when you tell them that, hey, you know, I learned the Chi Sao from the Wing Chun, I learned the horse stance from the Shaolin Kung Fu, and I learned how to use a katana from one of these Japanese martial art masters. I learned that from him, and I learned, you know, these throws from judo, and I learned, you know, the triangle choke from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You know, it's okay. You know, it's just your friend, it's just your family, to just let them know these little things that you learn here and there. You want to show them a little bit, that's fine. There's no money involved. You're not putting yourself out there for the whole world to pretty much be criticized for what you're teaching them. You didn't get permission to teach those things. You didn't get any rights to teach those things. You didn't get any rights to share those things, but you could still share it if you want to your friends and your family. But once you start going out there to the public, you know, you start making all this money, you know, with YouTube ads, and all these people are looking to you to be the expert because you have 1 million subscribers, then the thing is, what are you an expert in? Who gave you the authority to teach Shaolin Kung Fu? Who gave you the authority to teach Jeet Kune Do? Who gave you the authority to teach Tai Chi? Who gave you the authority to teach Judo? What, you can be an expert in all these fields? You mastered Bruce Lee's art in 30 days? You mastered, you know, Aikido in 2 days? You mastered Shaolin Kung Fu in 10 hours? Like, you cannot be an expert in everything. So if you're going to put yourself in that pedestal, you're either an expert of your own martial art, which is uniquely your own, or you can be an expert of somebody else's art, but you can only be an expert to one art, because an expert means that you put your life energy into the study of that art. An expert is not somebody who can, you know, who can master 20, 30, 40, 50 different arts. Bruce Lee was an expert to his expression of the martial arts. He could have called it Bruce Lee's martial arts. He could have called it Jun Fan Kung Fu. He could have called it Loi Siu Lung's Kung Fu. He could have called it Jeet Kune Do. He could have called it the way of the intercepting fist. He could have called it whatever he wanted to call it, but he was an expert in his expression because that was his. But you cannot take other people's reputation. Say that you're an expert in Aikido, you're an expert in Taekwondo, you're an expert in Jeet Kune Do, you're an expert in Tai Chi. You cannot claim that you're an expert of other people's arts unless you get their permission to represent that art. You need the permission of the founder, the creator of the art, in order to represent that art and claim that you're an expert of that art. So it is wrong for somebody to go out there on YouTube telling everybody that he's an expert in all these different arts of which he has no right to claim any of that. He has no authority to claim any of that. And he is falsifying the truth. He's making everybody believe that they're practicing these arts of which they are not practicing. They are practicing a corrupted, watered down version of those expressions from the person that they're going to. So that's where I'm getting at. You know, if you are not on YouTube trying to teach the world and say you don't have that many subscribers or that big of an audience or that many students, then it's not that big of a deal if you confuse a few people here and there. But it becomes a big deal if you are confusing, you know, if you're confusing masses of people. You're confusing thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people, and you are further damaging the reputation of the martial arts. You're further passing along false information, and that is not right. So that is what I'm pretty much talking about. You know, if you're not a world teacher out there in the martial arts, then you don't really have that much to worry about. But once you start getting into, you know, you're as famous as Conor McGregor, you're as famous as Floyd Mayweather, you're as famous as Bruce Lee, you're as famous as, you know, Jet Li, you know, you're as famous as Jean-Claude Van Damme. You're in this position where you need to be responsible with how you express yourself, not just as a martial artist, but as a human being. You know, so that's what I'm boiling it down to. You know, and I'm just basically identifying the false that I see. You know, there's no way that this could be true. It's impossible to master multitudes of arts. You know, just think about it in the context of how we live our lives. You know, somebody makes money as a mechanic. Another person makes money as a doctor. Another person makes money as a lawyer. Another person makes money as an accountant. You cannot be everything all in one. The more that you try to say that you study, the less that you're going to be able to master anything. And don't use Bruce Lee as an example to try to say that, hey, you know, he studied a lot of different stuff. Yes, he did study a lot of different things, but he was a master of his own martial art, his own Jeet Kune Do. He created Jeet Kune Do. He created his, he marketed himself. He built up his own name. He put in the work. He didn't hide behind Wing Chun. Wing Chun is hiding behind him. You know, he didn't beg Chuck Norris to make him famous or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He was building his own fame. You know, and he was an entrepreneur. He was a creator. Starring in his own movies, directing in his own movies, choreographing his own fight scenes. He didn't need a fight choreographer. He didn't even need the director. He directed his own movies, his own fight choreography, created his own martial art way, created his own labels. He made everything his own. And that's what you're supposed to do if you want to do it the right way. Or you can get the permission of a Chinese or a martial art master and promote his way. So you're either an entrepreneur or you are an employee or an assistant manager or a manager of somebody else's creation. So if you want to dedicate your life to judo and promote judo from life to death, that's up to you. But you need to get the permission of the judo creator or an authorized organization that is legitimately giving you the authority to represent that way, that art. Just like Bruce Lee passed away, Shannon Lee has authority over the Bruce Lee estate. So if she wants you to be a part of that and she wants to, you know, give you Bruce Lee's belongings so you could carry on the message, that's an authority right there that's backed by the corporations and by the law and by the money that's been built through his legacy. You know, Steve Jobs gave the authority of Apple over to Tim Cook to take over. That is legitimate. So if you're going to represent somebody else's art, if you're going to be representing Jeet Kune Do, then you need Bruce Lee's authority, but he's not living, so you can't get his authority. You can't get the creators of Tai Chi's authority or permission. You can't get Wing Chun's authority and permission. So you're going to have to do your own. And don't misguide people and say, oh, you know, this is my Wing Chun, this is my Jeet Kune Do, this is my Tai Chi. That ain't yours. You didn't create those labels. You're going to create your own labels. And you're not even Chinese. So don't use Chinese labels. You're not even Chinese. You don't live in China. You don't have citizenship in China. You have nothing to do with China. So don't use the labels of China. You don't have the right to. Use your own labels. Be yourself. Be who you are. And that's pretty much where it boils down to.